What is the number one thing you see consistently from companies that are afraid of working with AI?
Well, it's usually only the leader that says, "Yeah, we need to work with ChatGPT. We need to work with AI, and if we don't, we're not going to exist." So they kind of try to force everybody to use AI.
So you think the leader is creating the fear?
Yeah, I think that the leader is in fear first of all because of the news and what's happening outside. So they fear it, and they're trying they're kind of amplifying that fear internally. A lot of leaders. I'm not going to say all leaders, but a lot of them, big percentage.
So what's a better way for them to approach it?
I think is to not say, "Hey, if we don't get into the AI boat, we're not going to exist." But it's like, "Oh, okay, well, this thing AI exists. Everybody's adopting it. How are we going to adopt it?" And ask your team members. I mean, at the end of the day, this is going to sound promotional, whatever I say, but you got to get a third party trainer. You got to get somebody to come in and help you train your whole team. Because when it comes from the leader, it's like, "Oh shit, my boss is telling me to use it. If I don't use it, I'm in trouble. If I use it well, not well, I'm in trouble." So there is really a problem between the relationship there because it's always top to bottom and not bottom up. So what we do with the training is to make sure that they're meeting halfway.
Hey, business leaders and marketers, what if your brand could be featured right here? This ad spot could be yours. This channel is watched by a dedicated audience of ambitious founders, executives, and professionals who are actively looking for tools and services to help their business grow. If you want to put your brand in front of this highly dedicated audience that's difficult to reach, I'm currently looking for a few strategic partners for the channel. To learn more about sponsorship opportunities, click the link in the description. Let's grow together. Do you think society is creating this problem? Do you think the leaders that you said, I think the leaders are absorbing the fear from the media?
Yeah, I think it's the media. Obviously, the media is creating it. I think that the research labs. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, when you think about it, good news, positive news doesn't amplify, doesn't travel very fast. But negative news and scary news, news full of fear, travels very fast and amplifies very fast. So, how do you market yourself? Is by saying 100 million jobs are gonna get lost to my new technology, right? And as everyone's like, "What? 100 million jobs are gonna get lost?" But if you did say, we're gonna power 100 million people to do better work, it's like, yeah, great. I've heard that before. So I think that is definitely the media is not helping this.
I may be part of the problem because I've
Uh-oh.
I've interviewed a bunch of people and I've tried to get their idea about AI, what they're doing with it, how they're thinking about it, and a lot of them seem to have this similar mindset. They're like, we have no choice. We have to do something. And a lot
100%.
of people have reiterated those terms. If other people in business aren't actively using AI right now, then they will lose out to competition. So I think business leaders are telling other business leaders about this fear as well.
Yeah, I think it amplifies, right? So so the fear will always amplify. I mean, if we do think about electricity, right? So I think that AI is much bigger than electricity, potentially bigger than fire, and we haven't even understood it yet. Like some people saying that, maybe it sounds gimmicky, but I think it's huge. And when electricity came along, a lot of jobs did get lost. There were people in London, going around and lighting the candles in the streets. Street lamps were with candles or whatever, not candles, but fire with oil or whatever. I don't know the exact name. Those people did lose their jobs. Yeah, electricity came. And that's the same thing that's going to happen. But in the long term, I believe that it's going to be much more. It's going to bring more positivity than negativity. In the short to midterm, yes, it's going to create a lot of fear. It's creating a lot of fear. But we got to see it through, and we got to see it after this whole adoption, which is going to take years to adopt AI. But after the adoption, the day that we don't say, the day that we don't see on LinkedIn every post being about how M dashes or AI and everybody talking about AI, the day that that doesn't happen anymore, that means that we've adopted it and it's just in the background like electricity is. And you'll only realize it when there's a power cut, right? So when there's a power cut, you're like, oh shit, my electricity is gone. It's gonna be the same thing when computers down or when an API is down. You're gonna be like, oh. my AI is down, right? So that day is, I think, the day that we'll be like, okay, yeah, it's just a normal technology now, and it's something that we've adopted it.
How many years do you think until that?
I mean, I'd say around 7, 10, 15 max. I think Elon Musk had a speech the other day, that an interview that I watched and listened. And I'm not a massive fan or anything like that, and I'm just going to put it out there. It's not the side that I choose on the AI side, if there's an AI side, which there shouldn't be. But there's definitely not that side that I'll be on. But he said about 10 to 20 years, and he said that in about 20 years, working is going to be optional. It's going to be like a hobby. So I believe that we should be adopting it fully 7 to 10 years, so that we have another, about 10 years to have this work optional.
And so during that time, there's a lot of people that are saying jobs are going to get lost.
Yep.
There's people saying that people who don't know how to use AI are going to lose jobs to people who are willing to work with AI. Kind of like I saw my grandfather have the choice to learn how to use a desktop computer or retire, and he chose to retire. Um, which do you think is going to be more prevalent?
Um, I mean, I do believe that jobs will be lost, but there's going to be lots of new jobs that are created. I would say as well that is a must, because there are a lot of jobs, there's a lot of tasks that we're doing that are, one, not fun whatsoever, right? Two, are very repetitive, and three, they don't need any high cognitive power, right? So those jobs will get lost, and I'm sorry for the ones that are doing this type of jobs, but you do have the opportunity right now to innovate what you do, to rethink what you do and to upskill yourself. There's so much free content, incredible podcasts like yours. There's YouTube. There's my YouTube. There's a lot of places where people share everything they know. Right. So if you're a bit curious, you'll really get on top of this technology. So what I mean here is, yes, there will be people that will take, they're not going to take over your job, but what's going to happen, which we're already seeing, is there are job description now out there that it says, hey, we want you to be able to use Replit for vibe coding, for quick prototyping. We want you to be able to use the, Lovable, this, that, XYZ tools. So we're starting to see these names of tools inside job descriptions. So if I had 100 applications, I'm gonna interview 10 of them, and about 7 of them doesn't mention anything about cool new AI vibe coding tools, and they haven't tried it. Obviously, those 3 that are using it are gonna be the ones that I'm gonna spend my time on the interview. I think that this is a must, and I've seen it myself. By the way, Sean, I fired about, sadly, it was one of the most difficult things I've done in my career. I kind of let go about 50 people, and that's because we got a tool called Clay, and suddenly we didn't have to do manual scraping, and we didn't have to do manual copy paste from LinkedIn and so on. So those people, they have innovated themselves, a lot of them, and has found new jobs and new things to do. And that is going to happen across every company that we potentially can think of.
So I know that your business goes in to train teams of larger
Yep.
companies,
Yep.
but the audience are solo entrepreneurs. Of the people listening to this are solo entrepreneurs. How can they get ahead since they're not an employee of a company? They are the owner of the company.
Even better. Yeah, even better. How can they get ahead? Think systems, build systems. We always said this. I think that before the lean and agile era, it was very important to write processes, SOPs, document them down, and so on. And then the lean and agile came. The one pages came. It came that it was quick iterations. Move fast, which we should still move fast. But I think that it's even more important today to document, to write down the process, to write down how you're doing what you're doing, especially as a solopreneur. I kind of could say I'm not a solopreneur, but I have a very small team, right? We have about, including me, we have about 4 team members that work full time. And one works on video editing, one works on marketing, and one works on helping me with the operation, and I do the sales and serving the clients, training and consulting. And we're serving much more than normally what a team of four could do. So let's say that I was a solopreneur today, which I was, by the way, until January this year. So until the beginning of this year, I was on my own, and I scaled the company to about 200K on my own. And today, if I would do it again, I would process and I would write down everything that I'm doing, and I would keep optimizing those documents. Why? Because AI is getting so much better, and agentic features are getting so much better, that the second you're given a document of a process, right, a clear process, a step-by-step process of how a human, how you as a solopreneur do whatever client onboarding, sales, whatever you do, you can give it to an AI, and the AI is potentially going to say, "Oh, amazing! Yeah, I can do this. I need a couple of model context protocols to connect to these tools. Can you log in for me?" And you're going to log in. It's going to say, "Great. Maybe I can't do this, and I'm not sure about this, so I'm going to add a human in the loop, and I'm just going to tag you when I need some information, when I need some feedback about this, but I'm going to handle the rest." And you're like, "Oh, shit." It does the rest, right? So we are almost there, because I've built some incredible systems in cloud code. I was going to hire a bunch of salespeople to scale, and I just built a system. I'm like, I don't need to hire anyone, because I could just show up to closing calls. The rest is semi automated to, after 10 more iterations, I potentially can get it to a full automation, where I just show up on sales calls and close the deal.
So you're saying people that want to start companies now should try to figure out how to just build AI agent systems so they don't need to have people in place to, basically the traditional mentality was you build a company, even if you struggle on your own, you're earning money and you use that money to hire people to help you solve problems. But now you don't need people to solve those problems. You generally can just have AI agents to solve those problems for you.
Yes, but I would say don't go agent building right away. Build the document, build a system, build a mirror board where you understand the whole flow and how that's been done. Make sure that there are no cracks in your process, in your SOP, in your system. First do it manually, do it a few times manually. And when you're happy with how you are able to do, then think about building an agent for it.
I feel like those SOPs aren't so difficult anymore. Like when I was building, I vibe coded a B2B SaaS just kind of for fun, kind of like I thought it would become a real business for me. And I got it basically to production, but there was this massive bug I haven't been able to fix. And so I kind of let it go because it's a bug with an API, with a financial API, and it's just very very complicated. But I used Claude inside of Cursor to create all of my documents. It created the roadmap, it created the feature specifications, it created the user stories, it created the technical architecture documents, it created all that stuff that, like, years ago when I had my own tech company, we took months to build one of those documents. you know I feel like now you could even have like testing. If you're building a software, you can have an agent that builds out all of your unit tests and documents them for you, and you can to employ agents to, so there's like a lot around documentation. I feel like is pretty automated. I feel like the interesting thing is, so like I talked to a woman. I do mentoring sessions through an app, a place called Growth Mentor. It's a website. And
I think we're both there.
cool. I love that. And so I was doing a mentoring session a few days ago with a woman who has a marketing background, who vibe coded her own software. And I was like, "Do you have documentation for anything?" She's like, "No." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you need documentation. This is before." I go, "Have you had a developer review your code?" She's like, "No." I go, "Okay." She's like, "I've got, beta testers. I got people on." I go, "That's fine. What you're doing is good. Keep working on that. But you need someone, like, you need to work on getting revenue so that you can then have a developer to look into your code, because you don't know if what you have can scale, which is fine. But you need to have that in place." I go, "Have you done any documentation to support your effort towards using the revenue to hire someone?" And she said, "No." what documentation do I need? So I find that a lot of first time people, even though she was experiencing the pain for so long that she decided to quit her job and solve the problem, and she's helping other businesses do the same. Right, very common idea, pathway for creating a business. And yet, because her background is in marketing and not operations or in tech, she didn't know that she was missing something. And I said, 100 million percent, before you hire someone, you have to get all this documentation together, because if you hire them and you don't have it, they're not going to like you very much, because they're going to have to build it themselves and they don't know how the system works. And so all you're doing is serving to cause them unnecessary stress. So yeah, get your documentation together.
Yeah, but we're talking a lot about product documentation here, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't think about actual day-to-day human-led interactive documentation. Like, on a Monday morning, what do? Well, you review your CRM. If you're a salesperson, you review your CRM. You check out which leads, which deals are active that you should be following up with. And then you decide on how you're going to follow up with that deal, right? Do you have to send an email? Do you have to call them? Do you have to send them a LinkedIn message, right? And then you have also, let's say, two proposals to send. You have two closed deals. So congratulations, closed one. You need to send, not proposals, sorry, you need to send the agreements because they're closed one, or invoice, right? And then you just go and do the work, right? And manually, as a human, you go into HubSpot, you go into your DocuSign, you create those things. Hopefully you have some templates, right? And things get a little bit easier, and you do this work. And then I ask you, I'm like, okay, great, how can an AI help you? And a lot of people says, well, yeah, I use AI, to review my emails and to review a doc. And I'm like, okay, no, really, how can AI help you? Well, it can't really help me because I'm doing my work anyways. I'm like, what is that work you're doing? And then if you can put that work into a document, then I can tell Claude Code, be like, hey, here's a job that's a salesperson does on a Monday morning. How can we automate it? And it will say, oh, great, I can create, 6 sub-agents, one that is going to review the deals and is going to decide on the priority, one sub-agent that is potentially going to write follow-ups, one sub-agent that maybe is going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to check which agreements do we need to send. And then it's going to fail at sending agreements because it's non-deterministic. So what's going to happen is that none of the agreements are going to have the same kind of structure, and it's going to be a mess, and you're going to get all pissed off, and you're never going to do it again. But then you're like, oh, okay, I could build a Claude skill that could run a script each time, because a code script is deterministic, but I'm using a non-deterministic model to decide when to run that script. And then I'm getting very good agreements each time with a DocuSign API automatically connected, and it's automatically sent. And suddenly on Monday now, you're not actually there looking at all these things. You just come in, you say, all right, what's my work today? Boom, that's mapped out. You say, all right, what can you do? Well, I can do about 90% of all this work. It's about 10% I need you to check. And you have 2 sales calls. I'm not going to do the sales calls. The AI says that. The human does the sales calls. The post sales call, automatically that goes into the system again, and then the system prepares you for tomorrow. Right. So we are there today, actually. This is the world that we're living in today. But yeah, it's a very difficult to think about this. It's taking me a year, 2 years, or 3 years, since ChatGPT came alive, to really start making proper use of AI, where I'm not doing the boring stuff that I don't want to do, and I'm doing the stuff that I really want to do. So I think that we're also, when we talk about AI, we're all thinking about a lot of like incredible things it's going to do, right? And it's going to change the world. It's going to change how we work. Yes. Before that, though, don't report, don't do research, don't create drafts anymore. Don't do all of this stuff. Let AI help you do that, and work with AI to just do better. So that's what we do with our training. It's not to say, hey, it's going to remove you from your job. It's going to help you do your job better while reducing the things that is not cognitive, that doesn't need a human.
Hmm. I've struggled with applying AI to my daily things because I feel like a lot of it needs to be manual, and I could be wrong. But like I'm very familiar with going to Gemini and saying, "All right, I have an idea." So, for example, I I've been looking into fundraising, and when you fundraise in the U.S., you need to have a broker dealer license if you're looking to get a commission for success. And so I don't know anything about that. So I said, "Hey Gemini, what's the deal with this broker dealer license?" So it says, "Well, blah 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 blah, blah." It just tells you everything you need to know about this thing, and then you can go and you ask questions. Right? So everyone knows how these chatbots work. And I know that if I want to code something, like I'll open Cursor, and these days I'm not paying for Cursor anymore, but I have the application you can use for free. So I just open the different files of my because I vibe coded my current website, so all of the files are there. I just have to go and change the files as I want, and I don't need to generally use the AI anymore because I've learned how to read all the files and edit everything. But like when it comes to N8N and automations and workflows and these kinds of things, I just haven't gotten there because I don't think there's anything that I do. Like there's a lot of aspects of managing the podcast which I freaking wish I could automate, but I just don't know how because it's so complex. It's so many steps that require different software, and I just don't know. Like I don't know if it's possible. But so if I could automate the podcast, that would make my life very happy because I spend a lot of time on the podcast. It's tremendous amount of energy, more than
Yeah, well,
anything else I do.
I would say don't automate the podcast, automate the operations around the podcast, right? We still want you on the podcast, and not an AI avatar of
No,
Sean.
of course not. No,
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I'm
I
just kidding.
wouldn't want to do that. But there's things around like the editor has the file. He uploads it to Google Drive. So now I have to download it, then I have to open it, and I have to watch it. I watch it at 3 to 4x to make sure that that there's no issues with it. I can't trust an AI to tell me that there's no issues with this video file or the audio file, right? So I have to do that. And then once that's done, I have to open Audacity. I have to rip an MP3 out of it. I have to open up YouTube Studio and open up Acast and upload the audio and the video, and then I have to go
I think
to
you
another
can
one.
automate most of it. You can automate apart you watching the video.
Well, there's a hell of a lot more beyond that too.
Yeah, but I mean, like the ones that you just told me, there's a lot of it that you can automate, and nobody here is saying let's automate 100%. Let's automate 80%. And let's have that 20%. Um, when just earlier on you were saying about vibe coding a tool and so on, those are all new things, right? So you're creating new things, which is much more difficult because you're still figuring it out. But you've ran your podcast, what is it, 286 episodes today? Is that something like that?
Yeah, 5.5 years.
Yeah, so 286 episodes. I'm sure you know how to run a podcast, right? So you kind of gave me a few bullet points. I would focus on some of those processes, and I would say to myself, I'd be like, it sucks that, and then take that as a prompt, as a human prompt, and complete the rest. It sucks that I need to download the Google Doc or the Google Drive file, and so on. I have to go to it, and I have to take out the audio file, put it on Audacity, and convert it to MP3. I think that one can be done. So if your editor uploads it, automatically your AI could say, "Oh, something new downloaded," right? You could build that on make.com, on Zapier, wherever, on an A10, and it could say, "All right, well, download it, send you a thing," and it could also review it. There's a big chance that you could get it reviewed, not the whole thing, and you still have to kind of have another go at it, but at least you can save yourself time there. It could separate the MP3 files. It's the same idea as like Opus Clip or something like that. Right now, before, if you did a long video, a long podcast of 30 minutes, to get 5 shorts out of it, you need another editor, and you need time, and they're going to charge you what, $30 an hour, and they're going to take what, 5-6 hours to do it, right? Today you just go to Opus Clip, Opus Pro. I don't know what it's called anymore. You just upload the 30 minutes.
Opus Pro.
Yeah, Opus Pro. Yeah, it gives you about 90% of it done, and then the 10% is like, oh yeah, it just cut here. Let me change that. But that's getting better as well, right? The next version is going to be like 95% there. So I think that we're kind of giving up too early on AI, and we're like, oh, it doesn't work. Let me not just do it. But I've been pushing myself the last 2 months, especially with Cloud Code, because I was like, you know what? Claude in the terminal. I wasn't technical, and AI is making me technical. I think you had that same. We spoke about this
Yes.
earlier. It's like I was not technical whatsoever. I was an introvert, and I couldn't get into code. And now I love building stuff, and I got obsessed about Claude Code Systems, where it's a workflow that has multiple sub agents, right? And the sub agents has tools and has skills, and then together in a workflow, it does a process. It does my sales system. I don't have a CRM anymore. My CRM is markdown files on my computer, right? Because the second that I finish a call, what I do is I take my granola transcript and I say I open up Claude. I say, here's this post sales call transcript. It reads it, it figures it out, it goes to my sales folder, it says, oh, but there's a new lead, great, it's a call one done. It puts it in the folder, it does a whole research about the company, research about the person. We've spoken hopefully about pain points and so on. It already matches my services and what I'm gonna price, and then it gives me an email and it says, here's your post session email. Right now I'm not automating the sending because I want to look at it, but the other day I was like, oh shit, this is really good. I didn't even have to do any change. The first few I had to do a bunch of changes. Now I didn't, but I want to see that 10 times. If 10, 15 times I don't have to do changes, I'm like, okay, well, this is ready. Then I'll plug in the Zapier MCP that has Gmail send email, and I'll be like, all right, send those emails automatically. So slowly but surely, and we all want to, we work with so many clients, we do the training, they love it, and they're like, wow, AI is incredible, the things we're going to do. They get so into it, because I'm very into it. And then they're like, okay, now I want an agent that is going to do this and this and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow, have you ever done that before? They're like, no, I haven't. I'm like, so why do you, he's like, well, agents are incredible. We can do things we've never imagined. I'm like, hold on. How many hours do you report a month? 5 hours. How many hours do you spend building a sales deck or whatever? 10 hours. So, okay, well, here's Gamma, right? That's reduced to 15 minutes now suddenly. They're like, oh, yeah, I have a couple of templates and I put a prompt and it just customizes it. You don't even have to put a prompt. You put the post sales call, you put it on Gamma, or you put your whole CRM kind of sheet into it of that deal, and it just creates the deck. And it's like, oh, shit. So you saved yourself 14 and a half hours. Now what are you going to do with those hours? Okay, I can sell more. I can do this more, right? So a lot of people want really this incredible shiny things that is going to happen while they're not realizing that they're doing low cognitive, boring work. And I'm going to say it again and again. We do a lot of boring work. Why are we doing this boring work? It sucks our energy, and that boring work really does suck our energy, and you feel like you haven't done anything, right? Because if you just work on boring work, which we do a lot, I think that is even more than half of our week, you don't feel you've achieved anything. The feeling of
I
achievement
constantly
is in
feel
the
that way.
high. Yeah, exactly. Me too. I was like, I'm getting better, but the high cognitive, achieving things, it makes you excited and it makes you show up. The rest, it's draining, and that's how you go to burnout, is by copy pasting spreadsheet information, or taking things and putting on folders and finding files in folders. Like, this takes us hours, and nobody realizes that this takes us hours. And we have to go on a meeting to tell our 4 other team members about the new client and the deal and what's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, you wasted not just your time, you wasted other 4 people's time, where that could have been fully automated. And, it could have created a whole summary, and it could have gave you on Slack or whatever you're using. And the whole team could have been like, oh, thumbs up. I read that. You could even manually go to Notebook LM, create a podcast if people prefer to listen to a podcast while they're walking, running, coming to the office if you have one or whatever. Bam, they can listen to a podcast. There's so many new ways of doing what we've been doing, but it's just that because we've been doing what we've been doing for so many years, we're stuck there. And this is why people love to work with us, is because I come in and I'm like, why are you doing it like that? And they're like, I don't know, it's just we've been doing it like this. I'm like, hold on, can we do this way? And they're like, oh shit, can really AI do that? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, it can do that. And then we kind of semi-automate it, or sometimes fully automate some. They go, oh shit, I just saved tons of hours. We're like, great, so what's next? They're like, well, next is I have this thing that I don't like to do. I'm like, okay, great. Show me what's that thing, right? And if they have a flow chart, if they have a documentation, they have a Loom video or anything like that, you get it very quickly. And there's a 90+% chance the AI is going to get it as well, because we have the transcript. Like, hey, we had an interview with this client. Here's their flow. Here's their process. How can we kind of semi-automate this? And I say semi-automate because I still don't believe in, like, when large language models are involved, I'm not into full automation yet, right? But I'm okay with 95% and having a human in the loop. And human in the loop now can just be that on Slack in the morning, you wake up and you got a bunch of things and you have an approve, reject, or edit button. So that works now. And on Slack, you're like, oh, I approve this a post. I don't approve this thing. Why not? Right? Because of this. Go do it again. We have Canva MCP or Canva as an integration now as well. If you have templates there of LinkedIn carousels or whatever, it can also feed that. There's so many things that we can do. It's just that you have to drill down into small processes that are boring and painful, and not, I'm going to change my whole company's data ingestion and blah, blah, blah. If you do that, it's 6 months. It's still 6 months and there's going to be errors and it's going to be painful. But if you tell me, hey, I take 2 hours every week, to follow up with leads, well, great. Let's remove those 2 hours.
So I tried to automate my problem away with the podcast by creating a software that I thought actually, so it was a software that actually was designed to do what an agent can do, but with a UI in front,
Mm-hmm.
where agents didn't exist yet. This was like maybe, I think, the very beginning of this year,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. I think that's before agents became a thing. And so I thought, if I have this thing, then it'll get uploaded, pulled in by YouTube, so you have all the data, and then you can, it'll automatically get the MP3, and then it'll automatically do this thing and generate this thing and this thing and this thing and this thing, and you can basically automate the process. And now that I think about it, really, an agent could probably do that with MCPs, and like, why do you even need the UI for it?
Yeah, well, that's I think that this. I was saying that the other day, and I think the most funniest thing in the world is that 90% of my work now is on the terminal. And it and it's awful. There's just a bunch of text in a black screen, and it's like lots of text going, and it's really boring when you think about it. But I get very excited because it's achieving a lot of things in the back end, and I don't really need a UI. I just have to read, and now I even speak to my machine, with Aqua Voice, with dictation tools. So I tell Claude Code, I'm like, oh yeah, ask me 10 questions about that, or ask me whatever question you need about this, and it just asks me. I press my shortcut and I just talk to it, and I just talk very naturally. And then I go get my coffee, and then 30 minutes later, it's kind of built that system. I'm like, oh shit, this is awesome. Now you have even Claude Skills and Claude, so NA10 MCP that can build the NA10 automation for you. You can kind of brainstorm with Claude and Claude Code, and they'll be like, great, can you now use the MCP of NA10 and just build it? And it just kind of builds the whole thing. And yes, there is still maybe 10%, sometime up to 20% that you still have to fix, and you have to log in, you have to make sure you have your integrations. But you've got the 80% done. And I think I couldn't imagine this if you asked me this even a year ago. I knew something was coming when I saw ChatGPT, GPT 3.5, 3 years ago, and it couldn't do a poem, it couldn't do any humor, it was terrible, right? And I was like, oh, okay, but something very exciting about this. And I was in AI about 10 years ago in computer vision, image recognition for real estate, which was super boring, right? If you think about it, I was the head of marketing. Our sales cycle was 18 months. It was awful. It was awful. Nobody wanted AI. They didn't know what AI was. And then years later, this ChatGPT thing comes, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then about 14, 15 months ago, I quit a CEO role. I was a partner and I had a really good salary, and I quit it because I found a mission. And my mission is to help, starting from myself, because I practice this on myself. And then I help others on reducing the boring, the repetitive. I have ADHD and hyperactivity, and in what 14 years of my career or whatever, um, I never, I now feel that I never liked the job, and I liked the titles, I liked the salaries, and I just went for it because you have to work, right? That's the that's the that's the ecosystem we live in. Is that we all have to work, we have to earn money, we have to pay for stuff. And then I had, my daughter. A year and a half later, I had ChatGPT, and I was like, "Oh, okay, this is interesting." And about 2 years after ChatGPT, I was like, "Shit, I found what I want to do in life." It makes sense of this technology. Reduce the boring and the work that I never wanted to do. Reduce that and do what I love, which is helping others, training others, solving problems, solving my own problems, and then solving other people's problem, like your podcast problem. It's something that I absolutely love to show up day in, day out. It's like I love it when people just call me randomly. They're like, "Tim, I have this challenge, I have this problem." I'm like, "Great." Challenge accepted. And we brainstorm and we find solutions. And the solution that I'm going to give you is not always the sexiest UI, and it's going to look great. And it might be that, yes, it's on your terminal, and it's a command line interface kind of command that you have to run on your computer, and it doesn't look great, but it does the job.
Thanks for watching. If you liked this insight, I've handpicked another video for you right here on the screen. For more actionable strategies that get you real results, hit subscribe.